Rabbi Yehuda Kantor is the spiritual head of Chabad of Westport. Located in the former Three Bears Inn on Newtown Turnpike, Chabad blends traditional values with modern techniques, offering a home to hundreds of families and programming for people of all ages. So, Rabbi, welcome to 06880, the podcast.
Thank you so much. Is this the podcast where the world meets Westport or where Westport meets the world?
That's a very philosophical question, and I will ruminate on it and get back to you.
Okay, I would say it's where the world meets Westport.
There you go. You have it. The rabbi has spoken. So I guess the best place to start is, what is Chabad?
Yeah, it is a great place to start. It's also a philosophical question, but I'm going to sort of skip over the philosophy of Chabad because I think that's the way to lose your audience within 10 seconds.
And you know how to get it.
I know how to lose an audience. You do it once, you learn. But so there is a philosophy, and it is an organization, a system of belief, a system of thought, which spans a couple of hundred years. But fast forward to sort of like the Chabad that people refer to today, it's an organization that morphed after the Second World War with the charismatic leadership and pious leadership of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was at that point in Brooklyn, and recognized that the world really needs a lift. And, tongue-in-cheek, when you said before, spiritual leader, whilst it's true, and I work on that, it's more than just spiritual. It's also physical, because spirituality is found in physicality. So I think, the philosophy there, and he was, beyond spiritual, but it was to give the world, a lift of goodness and infusion of kindness, of, social services in particular communities. And I think that's sort of like, if I would have to, throw out some buzzwords, I would say, experiential, I would say joyous, I would say thought-provoking, I would say engaging.
So how does Chabad end up in a 300-year-old inn in Westport?
I didn't know it was 300 years. I thought it was more like 200 years.
I think it was 1700s.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Late 1700s, right?
Okay. 250.
Yeah, okay, we agree. Okay, we agree. Well, actually, taking a quasi-spiritual sort of approach, life is a journey, which is obviously a popular catchphrase, but, journey is one that, you can always, when you talk about a journey, you always ask, where does it start from? So you've asked me, how did we land up in the Three Bears? But, essentially it's about the journey itself. And I would, building on that concept, I would say that actually we land up because when we were looking for a place to throw down the anchor, the Three Bears was available. They had gone out of business maybe a couple of times. I think they rebranded and it was on the market. So, as I like to say, in the right place at the right time. And before then, we had been using all the wonderful resources in town itself. And so, in thinking back, because I have a lot of memories here in Westport. We're here for almost 30 years. And in thinking back, I think about the old Mahakano where we used to run our Hebrew school. I think about Earth Place, where we then moved the program. We didn't have a permanent location. We had a rental at some point on Ketchum right before they did the redevelopment. And, we were all over the place. So the Women's Club got a lot of usage for us. That was perfect. But it was time, and that was available, and that's how we got to the actual Old Three Bear restaurant.
And how about you? How did you get, how did you get from Australia to Westport, Connecticut?
That's perfect. Well, they say you have to follow your heart. So firstly, it would have gone through leaving Australia, going via Israel, studying in Brooklyn, getting, rabbinical ordination in the central Chabad yeshiva, spending time with the Lubavitcher Rebbe and in his, in close proximity, and then sort of like deciding to dedicate our lives to go out there and to, enhance the different communities. At that point, we had
We being
oh, excellent. Thank you so much. Well, that's why I said, actually, I started off by saying following my heart, because I did meet my wife in Brooklyn, and she's a Brooklynite. I'm a fourth generation Australian. And of course, the center of the organization is in Brooklyn. So I was always going to be coming to, to study in Brooklyn. I think in the back of my mind, I always felt I would go back to Australia and that's where I would live and, take on the next frontier. But fate had it otherwise. And we got married. And when that happened, to a Brooklynite, maybe there's a tri-state. There's certainly Brooklyn. There's New York.
Brooklyn is
maybe there's
center
a
of the
tri-state,
world.
but it's not. There's no Australia, and we're all the better for it.
but
So then
Brooklyn to Westport.
right from Brooklyn to Westport. Well, and then we got married. And at that point, we had to decide what it is that we were going to dedicate our lives to. We could have obviously gone into many different industries or different paths in life, and ultimately, it was a decision to follow the calling of and the inspiration of the Rebbe, which was really urging his followers to go out there and to acclimate, believe it or not, in communities, not to become to blend into the community as much as to offer services to the community and to do it with the resources within the community itself. And in that way, when I say acclimate, I mean Westport is a fantastic place. And, it's just an amazing place. And although maybe it took a little time for people to get used to a Hasidic rabbi here in Westport, and certainly 29 years ago, but I will say it's, we have such collaboration with the town on every single level that it's just been a superb journey. And so all I can say is the guiding hand of the Almighty really was involved in us coming here. Just as an interesting aside, Dina, my wife, who many people will say really should be the one that you should be interviewing, she's really the, we co-direct and she's magic. But I will just say her grandparents, after the war, they had members of their family which lived in Norwalk, and they were sort of sponsored to come over. And her family, it means her mother, some of her uncles, they went to school in the Norwalk school system until they got to a certain age and they moved to Brooklyn. So we have roots over here also from that sort of, and, her grandparents were so ecstatic when they heard, we were coming to Westport. They were also a little quizzical. It's like Westport because, the bastions of sort of like Jewish life was a more Norwalk, Bridgeport. There was real concentration of traditional Jewish life, and but they were ecstatic. And when we moved here 29 years ago, now they've moved on either to the next world or moved out of the community. There were relatives from her side that lived over here. One of them was very instrumental in the humanistic Judaism congregation, and another one was a member, I think maybe in Temple Israel. But, different members of the family, and they were always excited to see us. But they weren't our first attendees.
Sure. So there's several Jewish congregations now in Westport, the Temple Israel, TCS, Beit Chavarim. Can you talk about the Jewish community in Westport generally and where Chabad fits in with that?
Yeah, I can't fully say where we fit in because I like to call ourselves the smorgasbord organization, which is that we have a smattering of all sorts of programs, as you know, as you mentioned before, and we encourage people to partake of whatever they find attractive or whatever sort of talks to them. We have many people which come to many of our programs but are not members by us. We don't even have an official membership. We have a partnership, which is sort of like a play on words, but it's like we want to make sure people can attend without having, a higher bar, so to speak, of entry. So I'm just going to say the way I see it, but it's really in the eyes of the beholder, really, because that's the whole nature of it. That's the whole plan, so to speak. I think, Temple Israel and TCS is fairly defined. One is Reform, one is conservative. Beit Chaverim is modern Orthodox. Each of them have their own, variations of their definitions, and I think that probably a little bit is affected by who the particular spiritual leader is or the rabbi is at that particular time. And all I can say is that we have a relationship with all the all the temples, and the Jewish community of Westport is quite diverse. It's actually young, it's young. Right now, all the synagogues and temples are really expanding. They're there for every, I guess, people to find their comfort level. And so how we fit in, firstly, we in a way, we transcend it all, not in a egoistical way, but more because we do different kinds of programs, and it's not specifically sort of like within the traditional setting. You could be a member anywhere and come to us. But also, funny enough, although I'm not all that old, I am the senior rabbi by tenure, by years in town, being here 29 years. When I came over here, Rabbi Orkan was the Reform rabbi, and the TCS went through several rabbis. But yeah, we've had a very nice run and a nice relationship with all the temples and synagogues.
Can you talk about the programming? What do you offer? Who do you offer it to? And what are you particularly proud of that you, in terms of your programming?
Well, programming is such that we try to be creative and try to, be at the cutting edge so that people, so it's compelling. We live in a world that there's a lot of distraction and a lot of competition for people's time. Mind you, Dan, I probably shouldn't say this on the podcast, but one of the big competitions is sports.
Of course, yeah.
And when you go up against sports, I can't say that I have such a good batting ratio. But that's a different story. And engaging and creative and thought-provoking. And, a program is easy to pull off. All the details, obviously, definitely take time, and there's an expertise to it. But it's what the result is. Like, what does it do for the person? What does it do for the family? How does it enhance their identity? How does it enhance their, feeling of belonging? How does it enhance the feeling of stability? Today, the world's not, people are feeling very unsettled for a variety of reasons. And, I think that places that give that stability and places that give that sense of comfort, and recognizing that, the world's a good place. Yeah, there are pockets of challenges, the ability to dig deep and feel the center of gravity. That's really the whole idea behind the programs. But you did say, what am I most proud of? I don't know if I'm most proud of it, but I will say that something that does stand out is the Camp Gan Israel, which at this point, going into, I think we're now 28 years, and I think we started with 7 children. Today, there's obviously hundreds of children in the program, and it's, it's my perspective. It's a bona fide, critical resource for town, because this is giving them a fun place, an educational place, good values, good role models. That's the idea of camp. But it's not just about the camp. It's actually the fact that we had campers that came through camp who then became counselors. And that was a milestone that was exciting. But really now what's really exciting is that campers that came through camp are now sending their children to camp. And that's sort of like, it gives a little bit of a nachas. It gives a little bit of a, a satisfaction where you see multi-generational, how it evolves.
And again, in terms of programming, can you give some examples of events you put on and who it attracts, who they attract?
Well, we do a smattering of different sort of like demographic sort of programs. So we have a lot of educational programs, obviously the old traditional ones like the Hebrew school and stuff like that. I'm going to leave out, but from lecturers, depending on what the topic is. It could be Israel, it could be anti-Semitism. It could, the last one we had was Sharansky, Anatoly Sharansky. I mean, he's a hero of a man, a refusnik, spent 9 years in the Gulag and, just champion of human rights. So that would be more on the educational side. For kids, we have, holiday programs, and also we have educational programs. We run a preschool also. We're now actually the preschool. One of the buildings is right across the street. But, we're creative with all the ages, because I think that's the way to engage with people on each part of their own journey.
And you mentioned the relationship you have with the town. And you said, you're a real part of the community. Does this reach beyond the religious?
Oh, yes, indeed. We've been here through a bunch of first select people. So I think when I moved here, it was Diane Farrell, then Gordon Joseph, and then, of course, Jim Marpy and Jen Tucker, and now Kevin Christie. So, we've been there over a couple of tenures. Remember very much dealing with Elliot Landon as the superintendent. Now with Tom Scaris, we have, a great relationship. Fody, so we've, when I say, we're involved with the institutional side of town too. Of course, we're very proud when our dear friend and, our dear friend Avi Kana was second selectman.
Yep.
That was also, I think I was the first Hasidic rabbi, which was there in the Republican, sort of like the committee over there when the tally came in.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've had some good experiences there.
And how about with the other clergy, the non-Jewish clergy?
I have a little bit of a relationship. It's not where my focus is. Not for a disinterest in that as much as, I have a tendency to hone in and focus and run at the wall on the things that we're involved with. I do know that there's a wonderful relationship between the clergy and the Jewish, the Jewish clergy, which is beautiful. And for us, at least for me and my philosophy, it's like you have to know who you are. You have to be distinct. You have to be proud, and you have to be welcoming. So, different strokes for different folks is actually not a divisive statement. It's actually an embracing statement. And I think that's probably part in the philosophy of Chabad itself. That, whilst we have almost no real observant members in Chabad, we do have several, but it's not the focus. I'm clearly as traditional as they come. Aside from my tie, I don't think we've changed much.
It's a fraught time in America now, with anti-Semitism on the rise, and it's a tough time. What's the situation like in Westport in terms of tolerance, anti-Semitism? Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I myself personally, it is this tendency, so there's personalities. I skew a little bit onto the side of things are good, half full, right? Westport, all I can say is every time or any time that there's any issue, within a very short amount of time, we're sitting down with the administration. I can't tell you how many times we sat down with Tom Scaris and the other rabbis in town, and he said, "Look, I want to address this," and creatively coming up with ideas. We recently, sat down with the change of the guard here in town. The rabbis and police. It was actually at the police headquarters. I'm assuming that's fine to say this on a podcast. And first and second select woman. And I think that there's an absolute dedication to making sure and ensuring that the Jewish community is taken care of, and that hate and racism, bigotry is not tolerated in town. So I would give it the highest marks possible. I mean, I think, look, anti-Semitism is a problem, and I think kids and adults, who knows what they're harboring internally. That's part of the makeup of humankind. It's not there in order to act on it. It's there in order to work on oneself to become a better person. But that's, not everyone does that. So it does exist. But in terms of the response of the town, I give it
Wow.
really serious two thumbs up.
That is great to hear. Very positive. Looking ahead for Chabad, is there anything on your bucket list or wish list that, boy, if I have a magic wand, I could get that done?
Mm. Yeah, I love that question. I don't think a half hour on the podcast is going to be long enough for that. I would say just on not so much a wish list, because we believe on, if there's a wish, get it done. And I think that's the philosophy of Chabad also. That's what the Rebbe always said. And it's, it's deeply ingrained, really the only thing that stands, and it's an old Jewish saying or philosophical idea, the only thing that really stands in your way is your desire. If you really will it, you can get it done. Mm-hmm. So that's like tongue-in-cheek on an answer to that. But I would say that, we're going into the 30th year, and we have been having internal conversations of how to expand our programming, how to reach out, even better to the demographics, and how to bring just the joy of Judaism and identity. It's not just Judaism; it's a joy of existence. It's a joy of being, and making this world like, the best place it could be. And each person can really contribute something that the other cannot, and it can't be a rabbinic dictum. It's got to be like all hands on deck. And so I think, Dan, you and I, we share, so much in common in this, right, of making Westport a better place. And that by extension, I mean, you don't cease to bring in all those people which stem from Westport doing what they're doing in their particular field, which is awesome. And, the old saying of it takes a town to educate a child, that's definitely true. But, we so much in common. The world is a troublesome place. And there are, troublesome signs. But that's not really, I think, where we should be focusing. We have to focus on how we actually thwart or totally drown those kind of signs with acts of goodness and kindness. And I think that's the best way to address anti-Semitism is like, to have a strong sense of identity and pride. The best way to address all of these challenges is just keep on doing more and do it better.
Great philosophy. We've only got a couple minutes left, but I want to talk about you as a Westporter.
Sure.
When you're not doing your thing at
You want to talk about property taxes? Look, what do you want to talk about?
No. Where do you hang out? What are your hangouts?
That's a great one. As a rabbi, sometimes you have to know where you're not wanted. People want to see the rabbi in synagogue. They may not want to see the rabbi in all the other places that they're letting their hair down. I say that tongue-in-cheek. We, like, the library is one of the places that's really one of the beautiful, safe places here in Westport. When I say safe, I mean where I would enjoy to spend time. Starbucks is, another place. But I don't hang out all that much, to be honest. In that aspect, my kids will probably tell you I'm boring. But
every kid says that.
Yeah, of course. Well, I try hard. But at the end of the day, there's so many resources here in town. And ironically, once in a while, when I want to really exhale, I'll go out of town because, as a public figure, Sure. But again, this community has been the best thing that has happened to the Kantor family, shall I say. And we love this community. And we look forward to doing more and more within this community.
Fantastic. Favorite restaurant? You and your wife?
Yeah, because of kosher, we don't, we're a little limited. So the favorite restaurant at this particular time is the New Three Bears, a.k.a. the Chabad.
There you go.
No, or actually...
And you have a catering facility there, right?
We have many events that we bring in caterers, yeah.
Right. Last question. This is great. Any message to people who are watching, to Westport?
Yeah, my message is when you make decisions about what to do in life, just make sure you're including meaningful, enduring, eternal sorts of activities, very deliberately, so that you can just put a little bit more of meaning into your life and happiness as a result, and have no regrets later on. But also, very importantly, have a good time on the way. You have to enjoy yourself. Life is there. It's multidimensional. And really, again, another philosophy of Chabad is that the umbrella concept is joy. So, you have to infuse everything you're doing with joy. Sometimes there's tasks you don't want to do, but you have to find the joyous element of it because you'll do it better. And even when you're having officially a good time, you have to be joyous. You have to be able to allow it to really permeate you.
A joyful message. Rabbi Yehuda Kantor, thank you very much for being on the 06880 podcast. And if anybody wants to know more about Chabad, they can
reach out, Rabbi at chabadofwestport.com, or they can call 203-226-8584, or they can drop past at the old Three Bears. And by the way, did I mention that in 2018, we got the wonderful distinction from the town, Historical Preservation Award for preserving the old Three Bears. And with that, I'd like to invite you to come down and visit. You'll get to see the layout, probably spur on some good memories, and we'll give you something good to eat also.
Congratulations. Rabbi, thank you very much, and thanks for being on the podcast again.
Thanks so much.
You bet.